Number one is the ways that Aspies sometimes distort reality. People with Asperger syndrome is what we call jumping to conclusions. That's going to require a little bit of explanation. You may be wondering why, because, well, everybody knows what jumping to conclusions, we know what that's all about. What we don't understand sometimes is that the proper term for that is inference confusion. Let me explain how this works and see if you can identify with this. Have you ever lost, say, your car keys or maybe a cell phone, and you're just sure somebody took it? Somebody stole my cell phone. And then your brain kicks into action. You begin imagining how that could have happened or who it could have been, under what circumstances, why they would do it, how you're going to get it back, how you got to pay this person back for stealing your cell phone, and then guess what? You find it. It never was stolen in the first place. That was all imagination. I've gone through that probably dozens of times in my life. Well, what is applicable about that? What is applicable about inference confusion and people with Asperger syndrome? Well, it's this. A lot of times we think people are rejecting us, and they are slighting us, and they are finding us repulsive when really they're not. It's just inference confusion. But it's based on reality. It's based on the reality that sometimes in our life, well, let me rephrase that. Many times in our life, we have had this problem where people actually have rejected us, abandoned us, said things that are hurtful to us, and that seems to be the norm. So then we just come to expect it all the time. But just because we're expecting it, just because we have this mental image of what we think happened, that's not necessarily what happened. Well, where's the proof? Where's the evidence? Well, that's a problem, folks, because what happens then is we begin to internalize it. That translates into cortisol, stress, not good for our health. So the objective, again, as I say many times, is to be objective. We need to face reality for what it really is. All right, that takes us to number two, which is what I call should statements. And we've talked about this a lot of times in the past. But a should statement is simply stating in our minds the way the things should be. People should not act like that. People should not treat each other that way. People should not say those things. People should be kind and courteous. People should not get upset over trivial things. We have all these different should statements that are circulating in our minds constantly, continually. But are those should statements, are they in line with reality? Remember the analogy we used in the past where the moon aligns with the sun and we have an eclipse. That is alignment. Do our thoughts align with reality? That is what I call a mental eclipse. All right, that eclipse, that sounds like you're losing something, and I guess you are, you're losing sunlight. But what I mean by that is we are aligning our thoughts with what is true, with reality. That should constantly be our objective. All right, number three is self-gaslighting. I recall talking about this not too long ago in another video. When we sell ourselves short, when we are compounding the limitations of our mind, that is what I'm thinking of when I say self-gaslighting. Gaslighting, I'm sure you know, is when some other person tries to convince us that we're just a little bit off mentally, or maybe quite a bit off mentally, but they want to take advantage of us by convincing us that we have a mental problem. And while they're trying to convince us, of course, they're trying to convince others. But what if we do that to ourselves? What if we, maybe even unconsciously, are trying to convince ourselves that we got a problem? Now, it may not be a mental problem, but it's just a cognitive problem or distortion of reality. And we sell ourselves short. We confuse false perspectives with the reality that others impose upon us. And I got to tell you, that happens a lot because, and real or imagined, but when you are out and about in social settings with other people, they will impose upon you an impression. It may not even be real. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But they impose upon your mind an impression of what they think about you. Then we confuse that impression with reality. Maybe it is real, maybe it's not. Who knows? But when we internalize it and we accept it as reality without abject evidence, then it becomes, in my opinion, self-gaslighting. And I say my opinion, the reason I say that is because as I'm pressing 7 years old, decades, I've had a lot of life experience, and the whole intention of these videos is to share with you from my life's experience, from my life's laboratory, some of the things I've learned, and hopefully, because I've been where you are, whatever age you are, chances are, unless you're over 70, I've been there. I've gone through something very similar to what you're going through. So the whole idea is to help you out with what I've learned from life's laboratory. Okay, number 4 is self-blame. That is to say that always assuming that it's your fault. I probably should not say always, but probably a better term would be consistently, frequently, intermittently. Always kind of it's like never say never. I don't think that you think this way always. Maybe you do. I don't know. But you blame yourself. I heard somebody one time say that wherever I go, whatever circumstance I'm in, if there's other people, I make a mess out of it. I'm thinking, always? There's no exception ever? Well, in this person's mind, apparently not. But I think what happens when we start blaming ourselves, we start distorting reality with self-blame, what is happening is we are somehow vetting, we're screening out those positive experiences, which is not a good thing to do. Now, the reason for that is, again, this is something we've talked about in another video, but it's a good analogy. If you are baking a cake, you got a recipe, and you talk about balancing your perspectives. Well, how do you balance a recipe? The wrong way to do it is to get a pound of flour, make it a chocolate cake, get a pound of cocoa, or cocoa, however you want to say it, get a pound of sugar, get a pound of eggs, get a pound of milk. There, that's nice and balanced. What kind of cake is that going to make? Well, when we talk about balanced, we don't mean equal amounts of each ingredient. When we say balanced, we mean the proper amount of each ingredient. And there's a huge difference, obviously. You may just want a pinch of salt in that or whatever. I've never baked a cake in my life. So don't try my recipes. You may wind up with a mess. Or you may wind up with pudding. It's what you call a cake. It doesn't come out right. Okay, it's pudding. But self-blame. Whatever I do is a mistake. I've been a failure all my life. I can never do it right. Those never statements. That self-blame is just one of the ways that people with Asperger syndrome distort reality. And I'm not saying just people with Asperger syndrome do this, but it seems to be very common among Aspies. Number 5 is we tend to filter out the positives. So we're only seeing the dark side of circumstances. We're only seeing what happened that didn't work out correctly. Somehow we like that. It's kind of weird, but somehow we just enjoy that little, what do you call it, a pity party? Poor little me. Okay, I guess there's some place for that, but we've got to use the right amount of ingredients to bake our cake. Got to add a little bit of sugar. You have to be realistic in your perspective, and realism doesn't happen when you filter out the positives, when you filter out the good things. So if you were to take out a pen and paper right now and write down all the positive things that happened in your life, say the past week or maybe the last 24 hours, or you go back your entire life, what would be on your list? And if your mind is coming out blank, that could strongly suggest that you have this mental process going on inside your head, which is where mental processes go on, by the way. So you have this mental process going on inside your head that is filtering out those positives. And so you have a cake with no sugar in it. Probably won't taste very good unless you have a sugar substitute. Okay, that's fine, but We're filtering out everything sweet, everything good, the tasty parts. We're going to make a cake that is bland or even tastes like medicine or dog food or whatever. Why would we do that? It makes us feel good. You know, we like to, this is weird, but we like to poison ourselves. Maybe not literally, but we like to poison our minds with negative thinking because that puts us in a position where others should feel sorry for us because look how we've been mistreated. And there's another one of those should statements, right? Okay, number 6 finally is what I term magical thinking. This is a great thing for kids to do. When I was a little kid, we had all kinds of imaginary games. What is it about children that they can imagine? Great imaginations. They love fairy tales, and somehow they focus on those things and they imagine that they are real. You don't want to tell kids scary stories, by the way, because sometimes they will believe those, but there were times when I was a kid, I was certain that there were these little monsters that people-like things that lived in the wall of my home. And they would come out at night, crawl under my bed, and they were trying to get me. Total imagination. And I even visualized what they looked like. They were hairy, dark things like little monkeys, monkey monsters. Where did that come from? That is magical thinking. But I also had other magical thinking that was kind of positive. I imagined Santa Claus. Okay, that was the thing with the monsters. I made that up out of nothing. I don't know where that came from, but Santa Claus, that was taught to me. And I believed it. You know, Dad said there was Santa Claus. He's bringing me these gifts. He's coming down the chimney. We didn't even have a chimney, but that didn't matter. You get in the house somehow. So, you know, those inconsistencies, you can become an apologist for Santa Claus if you want to. You come up with all kinds of things. And that was a good thing, I think, for kids. You know, all kids, I think, with healthy imaginations do go through that. But what happens when you turn into an older child or adolescence or adulthood? We still have some of these magical thoughts in our minds. Some of that still is good. I mean, if nobody had an imagination as an adult, who would write the novels? I mean, there's some great stuff out there, literature out there that entertains us. So we got to have an imagination, but sometimes we can let our imagination become so overbearing that it distorts reality. One of the things I find that people do that's very harmful is they will maybe imagine that their life is different. They will imagine themselves to be phenomenally wealthy. I'm talking like multi-billionaire wealthy. And that just kind of stays in their mind. Maybe they imagine they won the lottery or they were a successful business person or whatever. Or they may imagine their life circumstances were different in some other way. And they imagine so much that it gets in the way of their real life. That they're just totally replacing, substituting reality with these silly imaginations. Well, cool. If you're writing a book, put it down, and maybe you'll have a bestseller. Who knows? I know publishers don't like fiction because they don't sell well. But go ahead, try it, put it down, and who knows? You might be the next Stephen King. So write it out. But to make that your lifestyle, no, I don't think that's a good idea. So what is the objective in life? It's not that we don't talk about self-gaslighting. It's not that we don't acknowledge our flaws and our faults because we need to. You can't fix something if you don't acknowledge it. But when everything is a problem, we're unbalanced. I mean, you know, we're making a recipe, making a cake rather, and we got too much sugar in it, or we got too little sugar in it. It's not balanced in a recipe sense of the meaning of the term. So what do we take away from all this? Well, what we take away is this. The objective always is to be objective. Go ahead and fantasize with your magical thinking if you want, but know where home base is. Always keep in mind that's just what it is. It's a fantasy. It's magical thinking. That's thinking like a child, not like an adult. What you see on your screen, 2 rectangle boxes. If you want our conversation to keep on going, just click on one of those boxes and we'll keep on talking. If not, well, thanks for stopping by, and we'll see y'all next time.